everyone, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Page Turners Plus. Today, we'll be reflecting on Ibis by Justin Haynes. To tell you a bit more about Ibis and Justin Haynes, we have Paula.
Thank you, Raul J. Justin Haynes is a Trinidadian writer. Ibis is his first novel. There are two stories running parallel in the novel. In one story, it is 1810, and Haney is an enslaved woman bound to a plantation along with her children James and Catherine. In the other story, Gracia, a Venezuelan woman, tries to escape turmoil in her own country by paying a people smuggler to take her and her daughter Milagros to Trinidad. Gracia becomes a sex slave bound to the same plantation house where Haney was once forced to share the bed of an English overseer, while Milagros, born to to Gracia, I think her name is, through a descendant of Haney and the overseer, inherits a very grim legacy.
Thank you, Paula. So, from the first chapter, we get a little insight into the men of New Felicity Village. Are these men waste men?
I thought they were. I'm anxious to hear a male perspective, but I thought they were waste men. It seemed to me that these men were never going to achieve very much in life. They seemed to be very happy to be running woman, drinking rum, going whorehouse. I in my concept of a waste man, that's who they are in my mind.
Well, the male perspective, from my point of view, shares your sentiment. In this instance, I laughed when I saw the question because the term waste man is something that I hadn't heard in a long time. And it aptly describes a lot of men that take up space. But really, the men and the characters in this novel here are exactly as you saw them, Paula, is exactly how I saw them. Lacking ambition, existed on a day-to-day basis. Basically, what was their end game? I couldn't tell. Did they have a plan? Did they were they working towards something, or just made it up as they went along? Enjoyed the whole whoring around and nice time drinking rum and old talk, and it was just everything that added up to non-productivity, that seemed to have characterized their lives. So yes, they were always men.
And then even the one who had a glimmer of hope, Royston, the UWI graduate with the goatee, he refused to move out of his mother's house and to get a job. So I thought maybe he might have had a little redemption, but then he just was a very well educated villager. He still had the village ways in him, and in the end, I don't think there was any sort of redemption for him, other than that he was educated at UV and he always had an opinion on things.
It's funny you mention him, because I did have when I looked at the question, I did have my mind did run on him and thought maybe he might have been an exception, but at the end I couldn't put him past the pass mark at all, for the same reasons. But isn't this very Trinidadian, though? I'm not saying Trinidadian men are waste men, but it's a culture that you could easily slip into, that if the
It's
environment
Caribbean, though.
allows it.
Tony, let's be fair, it's Caribbean. We know all of them fellows lining by the ground. All of them fellows. You and I both know them. So
They put a high premium on nice time, to get them off the block. Got to be something really compelling, you know. But
um
yeah,
but but Bonnie had something to say about them, which I think we should, to be fair to them, we should say what Bonnie described them as: bad boys but good men. Um because they had good hearts, and they had a sense of community. They looked out for each other and the women in the community, more so than not. So we shouldn't just dismiss them, even though I do believe they were waste men. I really wouldn't have much time for that.
Well, what you said does explain what happens towards the end of the book, where they sort of, you know, came together as a team to assist the cause, right? So it's not as if they're heartless or couldn't care about other people's existence or what have you. They weren't narcissists, no. They were very community spirited, but it just happens that the community offered a lot of time for idleness. That's basically what I saw, you know. Yeah,
They were waste men with morals. Well, some version
some
of,
of them,
of what I would
some of
call
them.
morals.
Mhm.
But criminality is a major concern of the novel. Without creating spoilers, does the novel give the men of New Felicity Village a pass for their criminal excursions?
I thought so too. I think the author is fond of these men. Um, these are men that I think the author would have a good time liming with. Um, and they did some uh, very illegal things. Yeah, some very, very, very like high illegal things, and it didn't seem to me that the narrative in the novel really gave them a hard time for it. We saw that they had some regret about these, especially one very big crime they committed.
Mhm.
They had some
Mhm.
regret. So it's not that like Raul J suggested, they're waste men with consciences. So
Yeah.
they're not amoral. They're not even all that immoral, because they don't go around looking to harm people. The big crime they committed, they thought was they were helping to protect someone.
Mhm.
So yeah, I
But
guess
that seemed to have weighed, that particular crime you're talking about seemed to have weighed more heavily on Royston's mind than than any of the others, if my memory serves me right. Royston is the same
it's
Yumi,
Yui.
or Yui, yeah.
Yeah.
What a pun, eh? Yui. Mm. The man who went to University of West Indies, right? That's where you went?
Yes, yes.
Right,
So
right,
that's
right,
why they
right.
call them Yui. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I
Right.
don't remember it weighing more heavily on Royston than on the other men. I thought they all equally felt, um, they knew they had done something terrible,
Mhm.
and it seemed to me that all of them knew it and suffered for it. Not so that they would stop functioning, but they definitely felt they had done something very wrong.
Yeah. But the way criminality is dealt with in the novel, um, because it is a theme in it. Funny enough, I mean, I know the whole human trafficking or the illegal migration part is, but they're connected too, right? Um, I think in that particular village setup, um, it was almost par for the course. That's how I saw that. It was what happened in the whole thrust for survival. It's not that you set out to do these things. It's not that you but at some point it's going to pop up, and sometimes it has to be executed. So that's how I saw that. Um, mm,
And I saw it almost in the same sense with recently we did Kipling Plus, and then previously we did Ingrid Prasad's Love Songs of Boise Sing, where this sort of criminality, as you said, just seems so normal in the society. They did it for survival. Well, Boise was just worthless. But in Kipling Plus, you saw this sort of criminality coming out where it was basically for survival, and I saw it almost in this sense where these are villagers, um, rural villagers who see crime happening every day, and they figure, well, this is how we survive. we're not gonna go tell the police anything. The police came sniffing around um, after the first major act, if I could call it that, and they all kept their mouth shut. Um, that's just how I saw it.
Another thing too about criminality is I think the novel is the novel kind of sets up moral comparisons because the criminality of Fortunado and Maldonado, for example, I don't think the novel gives Fortunato and Maldonado any kind of a pass. I think the novel suggests that those are just straight up criminals with no redeeming, nothing to redeem them. So I think the novel probably is playing with ideas of moral relativity. We can ask the author when we see him if that was what was going through his mind. But it does seem to me that the novel may be suggesting that your motives, when you commit criminal acts, your motives, your motive is either makes it better or worse, less criminal or less objectionable or more objectionable.
Yeah, I get what you're trying to say. I get what you've said. I mean, those two characters are bona fide criminals. They set out to be. They live by it. You know, they're not doing it as an organic thing, right? For want of a better word, they're doing it because that's what they set out to do. That's how they survive. So their acts are far less forgivable, or not forgivable at all. And as you say, the author is setting up that tiered level of criminality, tier one criminality, tier two, and as you trickle down to the village, it's almost like, well, give these guys a blight. They're not criminals really. They do criminal acts, but they're not by nature criminals. So I got that too.
And Fortunato and Maldonado also had no regret about what they were doing. Whereas we see the men of New Felicity Village struggling after they do terrible things. They struggle with the fact that they've done these terrible things.
I mean, one of them, when they were getting initiated, I can't remember which one, with the body part that was used as the soccer ball. I mean,
Yeah,
Yes, that
that's
was
hardcore.
yes, but he was a criminal before that.
Yeah, that's
That was
hardcore. Eh?
Maldonado. That was Maldonado, but that
Yeah.
he was a criminal before that,
Mm,
and Fortunato had to rein him in
mm.
because he couldn't have Maldonado thinking he could compete with his criminal enterprise. So that was how Maldonado reined him in. But I don't know that Fortunato. That was, of course, affected him terribly. But I don't know that I had all that much sympathy for Maldonado. I saw that it was a terrible act and it would affect anybody dramatically. But I didn't see anything in Maldonado that made me want to sympathize with him.
Maybe not, but in the moment, that was some serious trauma, right? And it, as I say, it doesn't get more hardcore than that. But you're right. It's nothing that didn't desensitize him in the end, anyway, right? So it was um, well, went on and lived the criminal life. So, but I just thought that when I saw that description of that, and it's a casual way in which the author slipped that in, that I felt, what the hell is going on here? Right?
and did you find that the novel troubled any traditional portrayals of gender in any significant way? I would like to hear what you guys think because on reading the question, I didn't think so, but maybe I don't know. I'd like to hear what you what you think.
I didn't think so either. Bonnie is not Bunny is a woman who killed a shark, punched a shark with her bare hands. So she so she defies the traditional boxes, but not so much. She's still pining after Peter called Peter when when he um when he jilts her. She still becomes a mother to Milagros when Milagros needs mothering. Um, so I didn't think it troubled um, traditional ideas of gender roles um, in any major way. In fact, I think this is a novel in some ways, a novel about masculinity, in very similar to how Kipling Plus was a novel about masculinity. Um, I know what the rest of you think.
I found that. I found that too. Although there was some, um, you know, yeah, the one who punched the shark. Um, but the remind me the description of one of the main female characters, the prostitute who destroyed men. Um, what was
Cat, the goat, Catherine, the Disembowler.
Yeah,
Yes, yes,
Yes,
yes.
Catherine the
Catherine wasn't a
Disembowler.
prostitute though. Catherine was just a woman who was sure of herself and had liberated sexuality.
Right.
She
Okay.
was
So
not
you,
a
well, okay,
prostitute,
call it liberated sexuality, but but
right?
but I'm going to her as perhaps one that challenges the traditional um, gender role. In that she was such a, I mean, she was described as "don't mess with me," right? That's how I got that. Catherine the Disemboweler.
Yeah, but Catherine wasn't just. I don't want to give away the
Hmm.
story for people who haven't read the novel,
Yeah.
but Catherine was a much more complex um,
Character. Yeah.
character
Hmm.
than just a woman who was sexually liberated.
Yeah.
Um, Catherine may
Yeah.
not
She had some
have
other
of us.
powers. Hmm.
She may not have been of us.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah. In strictly speaking, it's unfair maybe to compare her with a female that is of us, right? So I take that point, but I agree. It's very much a novel in the same way that Kipling Plus is about masculinity and um, maybe less so in this one of becoming, of actualizing young um, people, males coming into their mature being. So yeah, I got that same vibe from
And thinking
this.
of this, I was also thinking of Milagros to an extent, but I'm thinking more in terms of her position as a migrant more than as a woman, or as a girl and then becoming a woman. And Eve, that's a spoiler. But in terms of her rise from very troubled past into becoming a journalist asking tough questions, I suppose in terms of the traditional migrant story, that was something that challenged portrayals or even stereotypes of migrants from troubled past, like she had. But definitely not in terms of a traditional portrayal of gender, but more so in terms of her migrant background. So then
But I also
well, I
found
guess.
that she, as in a journalistic role, was militant is not the right word, but she was tough. Um, she was definitely tough, and in the search for truth, if you want to call it that, or in the search for her mother. Um, I felt that she had a lot of backbone, right? There were certain scenes in the novel that was also described that where she seemed to have been, her life was, if I remember right, was under threat. So she came through all of that as a superwoman, Paula, as a
Might
as
that not have been because she felt she had nothing to lose? I
Could
think
be.
the way I see it, that child had lost so much at a very tender age that I honestly think Milagros just didn't think she had anything left to lose. So she could take big chances because what was she living for? She could take huge chances. That's how I read her.
Yeah, and she certainly had that blunt approach, right? So they weren't necessarily the smooth. There were jagged edges about her, right? And no pretension about that either. She wasn't trying to be the passive woman. Um, so, and maybe because of her circumstances, as you aptly pointed out, Paul.
And then we started talking about Milagros, so I guess we could talk about the novel's main concern. So the novel's main concern is human trafficking, and it tackles this by showing us a plantation in Trinidad around 1810 and contemporary Trinidad and contemporary Venezuela. Did you find the comparison persuasive?
I did. It took me a while
Hmm.
to put the pieces together
Hmm.
and to see the commonalities.
Hmm.
Um, but I thought the novel made a persuasive argument
Hmm.
that um, the people trafficking we are seeing, well, certainly where women are trafficked as sex
Hmm.
slaves, there is there are strong similarities between the human trafficking of Africa
Hmm.
to the Americas. But like I said,
Hmm.
it didn't slap me in my face immediately. It took me a while to kind of work my way through it to see the similarities. And I think I applaud Justin for having pointed that out to us because I don't think that is something that we would immediately think of. But it's an important comparison.
Certainly
I
did not jump out at me. And I had, when I saw the question, I had to think a lot about it. Um, and I didn't pick up to the great detail that you picked up on that, Paula. And now that you've mentioned it, I can see the the intent of both activities is almost the same. It results in the same human suffering. It, it, it almost says, here it is again in a different form, right? Um, I didn't get the impression that that was intentional, and then maybe it is. And well, it has to be. What else? What is the other reason for um, making that linkage? The historic curse, yes, I can see that as also being an important thread that runs from that century into current day. Um, but the question specifically asks about the human traffic linkage. I did not pick it up even to this point until you brought it out. It certainly didn't put a light bulb off in my head.
Yeah, as Paul said, I think I definitely applaud Justin for doing it because it's well, I don't know if I could call it unconventional in terms of the narrative. Because reading it at first, I was like, this is a very strange narrative to have where you're switching timelines, and then I saw the connection, and then I watched after I read the book, I watched a lecture or like academic talk that Justin gave shortly after his book was released. And then I think that's when the light bulb went off for me because I've always had in my mind, yeah, the transatlantic slave trade was human trafficking. And what is happening with the migrant crisis between Trinidad and Venezuela is also human trafficking. But they're so distant that we don't really make the connection that often. So, as I said, I really applaud Justin for making that connection
And the
for us.
setting, the theater of the sea, right? That also was. I think now that we're talking about it, I can see that being a commonality as well because a lot of this thing takes place. Obviously, the mode of transportation was by boat. So a lot of this takes place on this what could be a nice, serene, sea can equally turn as angry. and also think about the many bodies that are lying on the seabed in a similar way as human trafficking does today, as what the transatlantic slave trade um, coughed for us, right? So as you ventilate it, I'm being more and more connected to the the actual connection that the author's making.
And just in case we weren't going to make the connection, Justin made it for us in the novel. Because one important an important aspect of the narrative is that Milagros is a descendant of Haney, the enslaved woman on the plantation. Milagros's father is a descendant of Haney's son James, whom she had by the overseer. Um, so um, he's making a direct connection between someone enslaved, and he puts them in the same plantation house, because when Milagros comes over from Venezuela with her mother, the plantation house has become a whorehouse,
Correct.
and Milagros
Correct.
lives
Mm.
in that. She's trapped in
Yeah.
that brothel, just as Haney was trapped in that same brothel.
Right.
So he wasn't leaving it up to us to make that connection. He's giving us that connection.
Yeah. Yeah. The plantation house is definitely a symbol, a critical symbol in the connection that's being made from that era to now, and a similar fate that Milagros, um, well, I don't want to use the word suffered, but experienced, as did um, her ancestor. So I get all of that.
And I thought that that was a bold, novel move where the plantation house now becomes a house of ill repute, because throughout the Caribbean, plantation houses become hotels, these fancy places where people go to have weddings. And here in this example, this plantation house became a house of ill repute. So I thought that was a bold move by the author as well. I'm not sure if this actually happened in Trinidad. A plantation house became a house of ill repute, but I certainly found it
Yeah,
interesting.
because very often they remain the possession of the descendants of the plantation owners, right? So it goes deep into our history where you see it in Jamaica, Paula, you see it in St. Vincent, you see it in St. Vincent too, that these old plantations and the great house, those that have been preserved, we know who owns them, right?
Except I
And
know some that are owned by black people. So
yeah, eventually. Um, but but in the main, and as Roger rightly identified, they become hotels, big guest houses, but not houses of ill repute, not people with red dresses.
So I wanted to ask, although the historical narrative about New Felicity Village and the contemporary one are connected for the purpose of the novel, as we've mentioned, could they be read as standalone stories? And I say yes, but only with a very sort of good inventive writer, I think, who could create two totally different stories, because they're both very big events occurring. The Venezuelan migrant crisis, that's a huge thing you could write an entire book about. And we've done books that had narratives similar to the historical one. I could think of Lauren Francis Sharma's oh, the name is slipping me. I can't remember
The
it
Little
now.
Axe one, the something Little
What's
Axe,
it called? Book of the Little Axe,
Book
yes.
of the Little Axe, yes, yes.
And even the Puerto Rican book, Dalma Llanos Figueroa, and Woman of Endurance.
One of
Those
them.
were narratives that were very similar, and had very similar storylines in terms of the sort of sexual exploitation happening on the plantations.
Yeah. In the context of this novel, I don't think I could have read them as separate um, narratives. And especially now that you all have, you know, really detailed the connectivity. Yes, I agree with you, Roger. There's enough material from both topics to develop a full novel, a full narrative. But in I don't know if I'm misunderstanding the question, but in the way the novel reads, I can't see the partition to say, well, this is a story on its own, and I can read it as that, and this is a story on its own. So, and that's how I interpreted the question.
So back on New Felicity Village, we know the names of the men, except that of the narrator, who always refers to the men as we or us. Do any of you have a theory about why the author may have made the choice?
I have a theory. I want to test it with Justin, but let me put myself on the line. Um, I think the narrator, when the narrator, who only refers to we and us, is pulling us, the readers, into this story. I think he's kind of an everyman, and I think the purpose, first of all, we never know who he is. He never identifies himself. We know he's one of the wastemen, he's one of the limers, but he has no name. We never learn his name. He only refers to we and to us and to our, always in the plural. Um, and I think he's a kind of everyman character. He is he's there to say, this is my story, this is New Felicity's story, but it could also be your story. This is not what is happening in New Felicity Village, is not peculiar to New Felicity Village. um, the challenges and the obligations we have as human beings are universal. And I think that, I don't know if I am reading too much into this we and us. I could be, but I think that was the whole point. He was meant to be a universal character, and he was meant to pull us into the story, to make us part of the story, and to point out to us that the challenges and the challenges and obligations that the people of New Felicity Village have are the same ones that we have. So we have a responsibility. Um, if we see my illegal migration and we see women being oppressed and all of that, we have the same obligation to act as the men in the limers found themselves, the obligations that they found that they had. But I could be reading too much into this. I know that I can have fanciful thoughts.
It's very profound, I must say, and you may be hitting the nail right on the head. I agree with you. The us is seems to be the readers. It's that is the pull. Um, I don't have such profound thoughts as you, Paula, to extrapolate that it is a call to action where we must look at what's going on in Felicity Village and see that as an extension of our lives, and we must join the cause of the men, and fight for well, not to put things right, but you know what I mean.
I think it was a kind of suggestion. If you see something, say something.
Say something, yeah,
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 I think that was a suggestion of the novel.
yeah. Um, yeah.
You know, ever the cynic. I saw it almost like a village news network, or just somebody. I guess I could use the word who's just snitching. Who's like, well, maybe I'm also part of the illegality and criminality here, but this is what these fellas are doing. I saw it. I saw it almost in that way. Like he's
So
giving us the news of the village,
so is it
or
that you can conveniently detach um when you want? Is it that the narrator is
I never saw him as being detached and being a snitch.
Well,
When
I'm
he
I'm, I'm
spoke,
questioning Roger. Is it
okay,
that he's seen it as a convenient when it's not? Does it
But then
fit?
he,
Yeah.
but then the way he speaks, it's almost like all we is we. So it's like he's saying, I'm telling on them, but I'm still involved in whatever
It's
they're
fluid,
doing.
isn't it? It's
Yeah.
very fluid. It's
Yeah.
very fluid. Yeah. It's an interesting technique, and I have to say that the author has experiment. Well, maybe he doesn't see it as an experiment, but there were a lot of things that were came across as experimenting with the style and so on, and it worked. You know, some bold steps to the left, to the right, which other authors may not do. Other authors may cage themselves in a bit more. So I think that really worked with the novel, um, to the point of what we're discussing with the we and us. Again, that's one such example.
And to pick up in terms of the author being caged in the way he told the story, do you think that Milagros's story could have unfolded in any way other than it did?
I think Milagro. All right, I don't want to spoil it for others, so I'm trying to be very careful in how I discuss it. But Milagros was so damaged by what happened to her that all right. Let me say I see Milagros as a tragic figure in many ways. More tragic than anything else, and I think the experiences she had as a very young girl just didn't leave her room for any other result than we saw happen. The way her life unfolded, I mean, she, of course, she had marvelous successes. She became a successful journalist, etc., etc., etc. But she never healed emotionally from those tragic losses and that horrible trauma that she experienced as a child. And I don't see how Milagros could have come back from that. I mean, I imagine if she had like some years and years and years of deep therapy, but that kind of loss that she experienced, I think the way Milagros's life played out, I think is just I thought it was unavoidable. I don't know.
Well, it certainly was set up that way. I felt, given the circumstances, how she came to be in the village, right? Almost blended itself to the fact that A, she had to be adopted by the village, right? And that's, while that may seem to be an ideal situation in the circumstances, it's trauma. Um, you know, any separation from your biological mother in particular, because that's, you know, that's you come through that birth canal. Um, it's trauma. It's traumatic. So the start, the setup from the word go was very traumatic. Um, I don't know, Roger, if this thing could have been played out any differently. I it was almost a fate. It was almost destiny. The given the circumstances. Um, I I agree with Paula that you're dealing with a character that was highly traumatized and doesn't end up too badly though. Given, it's not destroyed. Well, I don't know if you all agree with me, but I don't think she is a mess at the end of it all. I think she held it together. Um, but I don't know how differently that could have played out.
And the novel, her relationship with Bunny is really interesting. The novel doesn't whitewash it for us. The novel shows us that Milagros is adopted by the village, as Tony said, by the village as a whole, but Bunny in particular. And Bunny loves her, and Bunny does everything in Bunny's power to protect her and to, soften the blows that she has. But Milagros cannot bond with Bunny because she is so traumatized.
Mm.
So that Bunny is trying her very best, and I am getting angry at Milagros, because in my mind, little girl, this woman loves you. She's doing everything she can to take care of you. Why are you such a wretch? So I am getting angry with Milagros, and I have to reel myself in and remember this is a child who has suffered horrendous trauma. How
Correct.
else is she going to behave? You
Yes,
know?
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And isn't that true? We often forget. I'm going to our own societies here, which we live in. Don't we often forget when we see children that, as you say, Paul, you feel you could shake and say, "Listen, be appreciative of this. What's going on with you. But you forget their trauma. You forget where they shut down, where they can't absorb it as you can because you may not have been traumatized in that way, right? So, and maybe that's the or was the intention of the author Paula to invoke that feeling in you where you felt frustrated with her lack of ability to bond with with her adopted mother, if you want to call her that. Um, Given the kindness and the warmth and the there wasn't more that you could give, but that wall was there, and that wall was built by the trauma.
And then when she was retrieved, rescued, recovered, however you want to put it, she was already a conscious child. So all the experiences that she saw, all the heartbreak, definitely influenced her life. So it's not like as if she was removed from that environment as a baby. So she has no sort of recollection of the hardships that she had up to that point. So I think that's sort of what influenced the way that the story unfolded for her. We're almost out of time, but I want to ask a question, memory question. Which of the other novels we've read together, um, do you remember that we had birds and butterflies playing a prominent role?
For sure, when we were birds. I mean, the title now all speaks to it, but the butterflies were also a big part in that novel, and quite a lot of visitations took place with those winged creatures, visitations from the past, right? I know Paul is one who does believe that she gets those visits from time to time with with
I do get those visits. I get the big moths. In fact, I saw one this week. So I knew that was my cousin Nikki. Because it was not big. If it was a very big one, it would have been my father. But it
uh,
was a medium-sized one, so it was Nikki. Um, so
is that a Caribbean thing though? Just to ask the
I don't know if
question.
it's Caribbean, but it's Jamaican.
No,
That
but it's something here as well.
Oh, it
Not
is.
yeah. The
Okay.
fascination with that
Okay.
birds and butterflies. I don't know if it has to do because they're winged creatures, but they're often given these supernatural powers, or they're messengers of something, right? So, for example, a screeching owl. I don't know if Roger that resonates with you, but a screeching owl is a bearer of bad news, more than likely death coming your way, coming in the neighborhood. Not so much these days, but that's what
Yeah.
that's the legacy of that, right? A
Eric told
bird
this.
flying into the house. Some people look at that as bad luck. There's always that they're given these supernatural powers, and
I don't know if we brought it from Africa with us because I remember Eric saying that it's the same thing in Louisiana. But then, as
mhm,
Eric often points out to us, Louisiana is the Caribbean, so it's not.
that's true. Yes,
Yes, yeah. But
yes.
another one where butterflies played a big role, and moths, was This One Sky Day, um, by Leonie Ross, who of course is Jamaican, so she would have the same kind of connections to butterflies and moths that I have.
And again, she wrote along a similar magical theme
Yes, yes.
in this one scale. So to my point, they're always brought in. Butterflies and moths are always brought in once that thematic area is dealt with. Yeah,
And then I
but
suppose
I
I
think there
could.
were others. I'm trying to wrap my brain. Um, but the when we were birds definitely jumps out, and
Yeah,
law enforcement.
There were others. I mean, in terms of, and I guess I could ask Justin this when you interview him, but I wanted to know why specifically the ibis, because for example, in Trinidad, the scarlet ibis is the national bird. It's seen as a representative of wisdom and knowledge, whereas in When We Were Birds, they did
Kobo.
the kobo, which is a scavenger, which is seen
Mhm.
as there's death around,
Mhm.
dead flesh, etc. So I was wondering why specifically he chose the ibis to represent this particular story, which isn't a very happy story on any account. So that would be interesting
Well,
to
the
ask him.
opening of the novel, apart from the name justification, but the opening of the novel is strange because to see an ibis roosting on a house roof, um, ibises don't roost on house roofs, right? So I'm just wondering if the stark, um, that the stark representation was another reason why he used the ibis. I don't know. I ask him when y'all interview him.
I suppose that was a character or feature that you found interesting, but maybe I could also ask Paul if there was anything that you found particularly interested in this novel.
Um, because I had so much trouble meshing the two stories together. The fact that he told, because unlike you, Tony, I thought these could have both stories could have been standalone. Haynes' story and the story in the modern day story could have been standalone, and it took me a long time to see the connection and to mesh the two together. Because I mean, I'm half throughout the novel, I maybe like three-quarter way through the novel. I'm like, but why Doppia follow Milagros? I kept asking myself that. Why Milagros? Why Doppia follow her of all people? And then, of course, eventually I saw
You
the
made the
connection.
connection.
I
You see, I saw the
in fact,
curse connection, right?
these particular Duppies were following Milagros. But
Yeah.
I think we're out of time though, so we need to stop at this time.
Yes, we are out of time, unfortunately, but we will continue the conversation in the form of an interview with Justin Haynes. So that will be the next episode that you see from us. Thank you for joining us. Have a lovely day.